Good afternoon. I hope you're having a great day. What a beautiful day. Only 2 days left to Yom Kippur. A time when we look to forgive those who might have wronged us. When we look to think positively over those who aren't perfect. And I can't help but think about one of the prayers we say in Tashlich. That's the prayer we say at the water with the fish on Rosh Hashanah or any time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And one of the words we say there is Nosei Avon v'over al pesha, that God is Nosei Avon. He lifts up sin, He takes away sin. V'over al pesha, and He overlooks transgression. In the Talmud in Rosh Hashanah, the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, the Talmud says like this: to who does God Nosei Avon? To who does God look over their sins and forgive their sins? To those who look over imperfections. The Gemara says there's someone who overlooks his emotions and his feelings about something done to him and he forgives. That's someone that God will forgive their sins. It's easy to come to God and say, don't look at my iniquities, don't look at my imperfections, don't look at my struggles and my challenges and the things I did wrong. Yet when it comes to our fellow, when it comes to our friend that we broke up our relationship with, when it comes to someone that might have hurt us and we're angry and we're begrudged, we don't want to forgive. And God says, 1 second, you want me to be Nosei Avon? You want me to overlook your sin? But you don't want to be Over al Pesha. You don't want to overlook someone else's imperfection, someone else's sin to you. How could we be so hypocritical to look at God and say, forgive me, overlook my imperfections, yet we're not ready to do it to someone else? And that's why it's such an important time to make that call that's so hard. This is a perfect time and a perfect excuse to pick up the phone to your friend, to pick up the phone to someone who used to be your friend, to your family member, to your boss, to your worker, to your acquaintance, and say, listen, it's time to bury the hatchet. It's been 18 months of COVID. We've all struggled. We realized how life could just be in the fleet of a moment. Let's just forgive each other. I want to tell you a remarkable story that you might have maybe heard from me. But a few months ago, Rabbi Laus, the former chief rabbi of Israel, who was the youngest survivor of Buchenwald, and went on to become the chief rabbi in a family that has a lineage of 30 years of rabbis. And I've told you probably some remarkable stories about him. But he's one of the greatest orators. And a few months ago, during COVID, maybe it was 6 months ago or 8 months ago, it was really sad. There was this whole group of Bar Mitzvah boys that had to give up on their entire Bar Mitzvah. They couldn't have a Bar Mitzvah. And they were sad. And they did this Zoom event for them. And they asked Rabbi Laus to speak to them. Now, what are you going to tell these young 13-year-old kids who were looking forward to a celebration, to a party, to a time of happiness, to celebrate their adulthood of Judaism, and they didn't get that opportunity? And Rabbi Laus said, I want to tell you something about my Bar Mitzvah. After the Holocaust, I survived Buchenwald and all the struggles that went through that. And I was able to come to the land of Israel. Growing up as an orphan, just me and my brother. We had an uncle and a cousin who looked after us, but it was sad. Imagine these young kids who lost their whole family trying to rebuild their life. And finally, I was only 7 or 8 years old when I survived the Holocaust, but it was 5 years later and it was time to celebrate my Bar Mitzvah. And being an orphan, being a survivor, and all the trauma that I went through, my family tried to make me a special Bar Mitzvah. And people from all over the world flew in. It was the portion of Shlach, which is in Numbers, and I was going to celebrate this Bar Mitzvah in the shul of the community we were living in with our cousin. And the shul was jam-packed, and here I was, just turned 13, and I got up on the bima. I finally came up, and people from the international crowd was there to celebrate young Yisrael Laus, as they called them, Lulik Laus, Bar Mitzvah. And as I come up, you see, the shul we were in had this older, poor, lonely guy who read the Torah every week. Whenever there was no Bar Mitzvah, whenever there was no special occasion, he read the Torah. Now here comes this guy, and he stands up, then he's ready to read the Torah. And the rabbi tells him, listen, you know, it's a Bar Mitzvah this week, don't you know? When there's a Bar Mitzvah, the Bar Mitzvah boy is going to read, not you. And he looks at me and he says, well, no one ever told me. I prepared it. So the rabbi looks at him, and the gabbai looks at him and says, listen, no one ever told you. It was a mistake. But the reality is the reality. There's a 13-year-old boy, a survivor here. There's a whole crowd for him. He has to read. And the guy was almost in tears. He was a lonely guy. And he says, finally, there's such a big crowd. Finally, there's people from all over the world. And I get the opportunity to shine. And you're telling me that I can't read the Torah? And he was about to break down. Rabbi Laus says, I looked at the guy. I looked at the pain in his heart. An older man. And I pulled him to the side. And I said, listen, I'm a young kid. I'm sure I'll have many opportunities to read the Torah portion of Shlach, my Bar Mitzvah Torah portion. You're an older man. Go read it. Don't worry, I'll be fine. And on my Bar Mitzvah, the survivor, in front of all the guests, gave up his opportunity to read the Torah and allowed this person. And Rabbi Laus says to these boys, he says, I think that was my first mitzvah I did as a bar mitzvah. I heard the pain of someone struggling, of someone who needed the recognition, and I gave up my opportunity to allow him. That was my first mitzvah I did. And of course, Rabbi Laus says, as someone who traveled the world speaking, I had many opportunities to read the Torah portion later in my life and to speak about it. God says, when you look over someone's imperfections, someone's hurt, and you listen to them and forgive them, then God forgives you. My friends, it's Monday. Yom Kippur, in 2 days from today, we'll be Kol Nidre, we'll be sitting in shul together. We'll be asking God for so many things. We'll be trying to relate and connect. It's important that we look over others' imperfections, that we pick up the phone, that we make that hard phone call, that we forgive and move on, that we love and care and embrace. And may God love and care and embrace each and every one of us and bless us with a year full of happiness and joy, health and prosperity for all of Israel and the whole world. Amen.